Good morning, Assalamu alaikum. This is Allied School, Noshara campus. It's our biology class for grade 9th and 8th, of course. Our topic is osmosis and active transport today, that is mentioned on page number 85 and 86. So, in our last lecture, what we discussed, we read about a term, and that term was passive transport, right? First of all, let me clear what active transport is, but before that we should recall what passive transport is. So passive transport was the movement of molecules across a cell. Across a cell means inside a cell or outside a cell through a semi-permeable membrane, which is called as cell membrane or plasma membrane in the cells, right? So the movement of molecules across a cell without the requirement of energy. Right? And when do things do not need energy? That is whenever molecules or whenever things goes from higher level to low level, or from higher concentration to lower concentration. It doesn't require any energy for the movement of higher concentrated region to a region of lower concentration, right? So at that time we say that this transport is which one? That is passive transport. But whenever the transport require any energy, whenever the transport needs energy or requires energy or consume energy, then we call that process through a semi-permeable membrane. For their movement they need energy, then we call it what? Then we call it active transport. Let me revise it or recall what we said. We said that passive transport is the movement of molecules across a cell membrane without the expenditure of energy. This is always from a higher concentration to a lower concentration, right? Whereas active transport is the movement of molecules across a semi-permeable membrane with the expenditure or with the expense of energy. That is called as what? Active transport. And so we can say that it is always from lower region to higher region of lower concentration to a region of higher concentration, right? Okay, so we are again using the term energy in the case of passive transport, then we use the term energy in the case of active transport. And as we are talking about cells and bodies, living bodies, so to remember it, to memorize it, that in a living body the energies are always in the form of ATP, right? Or we can say adenosine triphosphate. So as the name is quite bigger, but you can learn this acronym, and the acronym is ATP. So the energies are in the form of ATPs, and the cell transport, sometimes it requires energy, sometimes it doesn't require energy. So when the movement is from higher concentrated region to the lower concentrated region, then we call it as passive transport. Whereas when the movement requires energy, that is always from lower concentrated region to higher concentrated region. What do I mean by concentrated region? That is that where the molecules are many in the water or in the fluid. That is, for example, let's take a cell, right? This is a cell. Here obviously we know that cell is made up of majority of cell is in fluid form, right? Just take it as it's water. And the outside of the cell, this is the outside of the cell. So outside of the cell also requires, also have what? That is having water. So whenever, and this is this boundary of the cell wall, this boundary of the cell is what? In animal cell, this is your cell membrane, and in plant cell, this is your cell wall, right? Okay, so as it is semi-permeable, it has tiny pores, and with the pores, because of the pores, the molecules from outside goes inside and from inside goes outside, right? Now this water has different ions or salt. For example, it's sodium chloride, so chlorine will be dissociated in negative signs, and as we know, sodium is in positive form. Similarly, cells inside have also these salts, right? So if there are more salt concentration, more sodium concentration, just look over here. So what will happen? Now it depends on the need. Do the outside of the cell requires more sodium ion? So if it requires more sodium ion, then from inside of the cell, this sodium ion will move outward. So if you look over here, here is the concentration of sodium ion is very less, and outside of the cell there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 ions of sodium, right? So it will require energy from moving from the lower concentrated region to the higher concentrated region, right? But when the cell requires sodium ions, these sodium ions, so then what will happen? Then these sodium ions from outside will go inside, and for this purpose, as the concentration outside the cell is more, so it will not require any energy, and then we will call it, what is it? That is passive transport. And as it is from through a semi-permeable membrane, so we can say that is what? That is diffusion. What is diffusion? Diffusion is the water molecules, movement of water molecules or movement of other molecules across the cell membrane or across the semi-permeable membrane from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration, right? Okay, now look at your book. What do we have here? Here is it. It's on page number 86. If you look at the figure 4.22, so active transport of sodium ion and potassium ion across cell membrane of nerve cells. So nerve cells do function. When do nerve cells function? Nerve cells only functions when there is the transport of sodium ions to the outside of the cell. Okay, when do nerve cells transport gives impulse or give response? That is when sodium ions from the cell goes outside, but the outside concentration in the outside there is more concentration of sodium ions, but still nerve cell cannot perform its function until there is the transport or there is the movement of sodium ions from the cell to outside. And now look over here. How many sodium ions are there in outside cell? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 ions of sodium are here, whereas inside the cell there are 1, 2, 3, only 3 cells. And what are these structures? They are your carrier proteins. So carrier proteins will take or will pull these sodium ions and will take it to the outside of the cell, right? Another thing, if you look over here, that is ATP. ATPs are present here. Why are these ATPs here? They are here because this formation or this transportation, that is from a region of lower concentration to a region of higher concentration, requires energy. And what we said? We said that active transport requires energy, and the energy is always in the human body or in other living bodies, that is in the form of ATPs, right? Now look over here, that is from a region of potassium ions, from a region of lower concentration, is moving down. So it doesn't require any energy, and it's directly going from it doesn't need any carrier proteins as well. So when it doesn't require any energy, that is what? That is your passive transport, and when it requires energy, that is active transport, right? So I hope active transport is clear. This is uphill. A word uphill is used. Uphill means that from a region of lower concentration to higher concentration, up the hill, right? Going from lower concentration to higher concentration. So I hope this topic is clear. Now coming towards your other topic, which is actually, and that is what? That is osmosis. Alright, so if you remember, in our last lesson we talked about diffusion, right? And we said diffusion doesn't require any energy, if you remember, right? Why is that? That is that diffusion is the movement of molecules across a cell through a semi-permeable membrane without the expenditure of energy. Then we said that there is another type of diffusion, that is facilitated diffusion. And in facilitated diffusion, what we discussed? We discussed that sometimes what happens, that there is a need of transferring larger molecules. In diffusion, there are smaller movement of smaller molecules, but sometimes there is a need of transferring larger molecules, and these larger molecules cannot pass the semi-permeable membrane or cannot pass the pores of semi-permeable membrane. It obviously cannot go through it. So then what is the adaptation over here? That is, the cells have carrier proteins, right? These carrier proteins carries or transforms the cells inside, the molecules inside or outside the cell, right? Okay, today we are going to read about another type of diffusion, that is osmosis. Osmosis is not a new word. Everyone knows about it. Everyone knows at least the word, that there is something as phenomena going in plants, going in animal cells, and that is osmosis. And what is osmosis? Osmosis is again the movement of water molecules from or through a semi-permeable membrane. This is why are all the definitions same? That is because they are the types of diffusion. So it is the diffusion of solvent, right? The diffusion of solvent. What is solvent? Solvent is that thing which is in larger concentration. So whenever we are making any solution, for example, I am making a solution of salt. So what will I do? I will put 1 teaspoon of salt in it, and then I will put half cup of water in it, right? So the salt is in less concentration, whereas in less quantity, whereas the water is in more quantity, right? So that substance which is in more quantity in a solution, we call that solvent, whereas that thing in the solution which is in less quantity, then we call it what? We call it solute. So less quantity means solute and more quantity means solvent. So osmosis is the transportation or is the diffusion of solvent through a semi-permeable membrane. This is your cell, right? Cell's membrane or cell wall or plasma membrane is what? It's semi-permeable. It has tiny holes for the purpose of diffusion. And that is that. Now, will the solvent means we are talking about a solution, but in the solution, obviously this cell requires water. Outside of the cell will also require water, right? It has water. The cell has water too. But now, and this is obviously the movement of water, not the other molecules, right? Movement of water. Okay. So what do we have here? that is the transfer of or the transport of water molecules through a semi-permeable membrane across a cell. Okay. Now this diffusion or this transport of water or this transport of solvent is always controlled by the amount of solute in it. The amount of solute in it, right? Solute means the lesser the object or the things which are in less quantity. That is, if there is again taking sodium, right? If there is sodium chloride, now it will depend on the concentration of sodium chloride. Where is more concentration and where is less concentration. So there are different types of solutions. In osmosis, we are done with the definition. It's clear to us that the osmosis is the diffusion of water from, in diffusion there was the movement of molecules from across the cell, right? In facilitated diffusion, I have written difficult, is diffusion. Okay, so in facilitated diffusion, what we discussed, that is movement of larger molecules from one part from or across a cell, right, through a semi-permeable membrane. In osmosis, what we are saying, that the movement of solvent across a cell through a semi-permeable membrane. Now what is this solvent? This solvent is obviously water, because there is more concentration of water inside and outside. But now this water, either the water is going from the cell inside the from the cell to the outside, or from outside to the cell. That is, that transport inside or outside, that is decided or that is controlled by the type of solution. Okay, so number one, we are going to learn what different types of solution do we have. So we have three types of solutions in the cells, right? First one is hypertonic solution. Look over here. Hyper always mean more. Okay, so the type of solution where there is more concentration of solute. Okay, all right. Second is isotonic solution. Now look at the word iso. Iso always mean same. So that type of solution which have same concentration of solute with that of same concentration of solvent. That is, if there is 3 spoons of salt, so there will be exactly the same weight of water, right? Okay. And then the third is hypotonic solution. Hypotonic solution means that there will be less concentration of solute. Cats are fighting. Okay, so there will be less concentration of what? Of solute. Alright, so look at your book. Here what you have to do in figure 4.21, that is page number 85, you have to observe the color. Number 1, we are observing colors. So the first image color is quite light, right? It's light blue. Whereas the second is a bit darker, and then the third is more dark. So here the light blue color shows that it is having less concentration of solution. For example, if you take, where is my paper? It's here. Okay. For example, if we take a cup, we are having cup number 1. It's that we are having cup number 2, and we are having cup number 3. We are having 3 cups. all of them are having half of it are what? Water. And then here I'm adding salt, not salt, I'm adding 2 drops of blue ink, 2 drops of ink, right, in this. So its color will be changed to light blue, whereas when I drop 7 or 8 drops of ink, its color will be changed to a bit beautiful color, that is light blue but not that much light, right? We can say blue, normal blue. But when I put 15 drops of ink into the third one, so its color will be more dark. So which one is having more concentration of the ink? That is number 3rd. So I will say that it is what? This is my hypertonic solution, right? Whereas here the concentration of ink and water are almost equal and they are not affected, so we will say that is isotonic. And in the third one, in the first one, that is only less concentration of ink is present and it haven't affected the quality of water very much, so I will say it's what? That is hypotonic solution, right? So it is like this. And now let's see how it affects the transport or the osmosis. Either the water is going inside or the water is going outside of the cell. Let's suppose this is a cell, and we know that cells have, if it is plant cell, so it has a big vacuole and other are different organelles, right? And if it is an animal cell, if this is plant cell, so it will have a cell wall too. This is a cell wall, its vacuole, they are different organelles, right? And this is what? It's your cytoplasm. And over here there are small vacuoles, nucleus, a nucleus and other organelles, okay? It has only cell membrane and no cell wall. That is an animal cell, whereas it's a plant cell. Okay, suppose I'm keeping the cells in a container. Let's suppose this container is my outside of the body, and this is inside of the cell, outside the cell and inside the cell, right? Okay, so now we will look that either solvent from outside will go inside the cell or either water will move outside the cell, right? So look over here, this is our first case. The first case is that is the container or the outside of cell, and it is the cell, right? Both are having solvents, both are having water, but here the concentration of salt is more as compared to outside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, only 7, whereas inside the cell there is more concentration. So what we read, that when there is less concentration of solute in a solvent, then we say it's which solution? It is hypotonic solution, right? So when a cell is kept in a surrounding of hypotonic solution, what will happen? Now look over here, there are less solute particles and more water, whereas there are more solute particles and less water. So as osmosis is the movement of water, so movement of water will more from more to high to lower, right? So this water from higher concentration will move to the lower concentration of water, not of the solute, right? We are discussing concentration of water. More concentration of water will move towards lower concentration of water. So that is, the water from outside will move inside. And when the cell gets enough water, what will happen? It will be swollen up, right? It will increase in size, right? In plant cell, what happens? That the water is absorbed by vacuole, and then this vacuole gets bigger. When the vacuole bigger, it pushes the organelles towards the cytoplasm, and then towards the cell wall. And what happens? That the cell wall becomes rigid, or the cell wall becomes turgid, right? It becomes stiffened. So here, this condition is then known as the cell gets bigger, it gets swollen. So we call this phenomena as turgidity, or we say that the cell became turgor. When do the cell becomes turgor? That is when it absorbs water. And when it absorbs water, that is when the concentration of solute is less in its surrounding, or when the solution is hypotonic, right? Okay. Coming towards another case, that is, this is your outside, that is inside the cell. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here is water, and in this water there are solute particles, whereas here is water, and in this water there are solute particles. In both the cases, the solute particles are same. So when the solute is same as in and out, we say that it is what? It's an isotonic solution, right? And then in isotonic solution, what happens? That there will be either no movement of water in and out, either equal movement of water in and out, right? So in this case, the cell doesn't experience any change, it doesn't swells, it doesn't shrinks. Coming over here, so again if you observe, so the outside of the cell has more concentration of solute as compared to solvent, and inside the cell has less concentration of solute as compared to solvent. There is more solvent, there is more water, and here is less water. Why is less water? Because salt is more, or solute is more. So when there is more concentration inside the cell, more concentration of water inside the cell, so this more water will be gone out, higher concentration to lower concentration, right? So when the cell is kept in a condition of hypertonic solution, what will happen? That the movement of water, or the osmosis, will occur from the cell to outside. And when water is released from the cell, then the cell becomes shrinked. It becomes smaller in size. And this condition is then known as plasmolysis, right? So these were all your 3 cases. It was about plasmolysis and turgidity, turgor. It was about osmosis. So we read it, we explained it. Turgor is done. Plasmolysis is explained to you. And then active transport is also covered. So our next lecture will be about endocytosis, exocytosis, and filtration. Hopefully you all have understood the lecture. Please visit your Google Classroom to see what your homework is. Do your homework. Ask if there is anything which you feel hard to understand. I will not mind to explain it once again more clearly. So take care. Bye bye. Stay home. Stay safe.